everyone. Gotta talk about ESG and in terms of EHS and our partner at ITA. We have a cornerstone today who has been serving us for years on the Japanese manufacturers in the United States, environmental, health, and safety. And now we all talk about ESG and really don't know the detail and points. So we want to go through today, what is ESG in terms of eyes of America and ESG drivers and what has changed actually on the manufacturing sites and services. And at the end, I'll be asking just a couple of questions. And we have today from Cornerstone, Cindy Madrick, Vice President of Business Development, and Ann German, Marketing Manager. Hello, Cindy. How are you? Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Thank you for joining today. We're all curious about learning all of these important topics as of 2021 now. Things are changing rapidly. So can you brief us on some of the key areas? Hope I ask you the right questions at the end. But
Sure.
yeah, thank you. And we're all curious to update our knowledge here today. If you could start, and then at the end, just let me know, and then I can ask you questions.
Okay. Well, certainly everybody's talking ESG these days. We're seeing it everywhere on company websites and annual reports, social media for sure, newsletters, and even a few commercials. ESG is being discussed in the boardrooms of all sectors, whether it's investment, food and drink, certainly big retail, pharmaceutical, personal care, trucking and logistics, and of course, automotive, and many, many more. If a company makes or provides goods or services, it's on their radar. Environmental, social, and governance, many of the ideas are not new, but now companies' values and goals and actions and its approach to sustainability are being quantified and judged by stakeholders. Stakeholder groups such as customers, suppliers, and employees are calling on companies to do more on these key sustainability topics. It's a framework, ESG is used to assess the impact of a company's practices, its contribution to society, and its financial performance. The ESG definition is somewhat eludes everybody. Everybody seems to be looking for what is the exact definition, and the reality is there really isn't one. That's a little hard to believe, but it's true. There are some very large government agencies, or really non-government agencies are better, including even like the NASDAQ, for instance. There's certainly redundancy in what those topics are. So primarily environmental will include climate change, water and waste management. Social is worker health and safety. It's workforce diversity and inclusion. Employee relations and labor practices. And governance is a little more self-explanatory. It's compliance with regulations is the bottom line. It's including EPA and OSHA, but also IRS, tax code, employment and labor laws. And there are certainly a lot of drivers. The drivers are brand image, which is driving a lot of people right now. Certainly stock investment ratings, but there are also now rating portals for private companies. Regulatory compliance will always be a driver. And a lot of non-government organizations are going to be a driver, certainly industry standards, and companies' own corporate vision and values and goals. Among ESG factors viewed as having financial relevance, though, to stakeholders, especially important seems to be climate change. And what's changed is what everybody is asking. Well, on January 20th, one really big thing changed. The Biden-Harris plan came out regarding clean energy revolution and environmental justice. This ensures that the U.S. achieves 100% clean energy economy and reaches carbon neutral by 2050. Corporate ESG is widely recognized as factoring into corporate performance. Gone are the days really where this is just a reputational issue and the latitude of checking a few boxes on a questionnaire. Investors are calling this a tectonic shift to socially conscious consumers. Various stakeholder groups including customers, suppliers, employees, are basically calling on these companies to do more on these sustainability topics and be more transparent about their efforts. A poor ESG track record can pose risks. And studies show that companies that can balance their financial returns with a focus on social and environmental impact are gaining traction with an ever-broadening number of stakeholders. So again, what's changed, right? So ESG metrics have been tracked for some companies for as long as 10 years. And there's nothing different about that. So what's changed? Well, what's changed is this: the availability of that information to consumers. Tracking the data is not new, but the availability of that information at the click of a mouse is new. Increasing in the number of customer requirements, that's new. People had 10, maybe 15 different customers that were asking for some simple data over the past 10 years. That's changed. We've had clients that said it's 2- and 3-fold just in the past year. We have clients that say they spend a lot of their time, much of their time, sorting through and answering these various questionnaires. Some of these questionnaires have redundant information, and some of them have very unique information. And the frequency of when they have to turn these questionnaires in is varying. The other thing that has changed dramatically over the past few years is the increase in ESG ratings and ranking. This used to be only on the playing field for public companies, but it's now making its way into private sector. Many outlets for public and private companies are out there rating companies. Reporting is still very much in its infancy stage, and there's a need for standardization on the approach and the fully transparent methodology and criteria. And we're going to see that change a lot over the next 5 years. Private companies for so long weren't used to pulling this data into the public domain, but they must change to build goodwill. Stakeholders are looking to see how seriously companies are taking these commitments. Another really significant change, and for a big OEM, Japanese OEM, this has literally happened in the past 10 weeks, is the reduction efforts. And instead of just a request that's been on the questionnaire for the past 8-10 years, whatever it may be, there's a transition to a requirement. Actually saying that rather than, hey, we'd like to see you try to reduce in areas where feasible, they're coming in saying you will change to 2% reduction in your carbon footprint or whatever other footprint they're interested in. For now, these tier 2s, again, where tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers were just tracking their data and making reductions where they needed to. Now the requirement for a specific reduction percentage and supporting documentation is in front of them. The corporate strategy has to, really take this seriously. They've got to go back and reevaluate the risks and the opportunities. They have to ensure that company information is reliable and consistent. Companies should have processes and controls around the development of the disclosures and to support the accuracy of the data. The ESG team, if there isn't one, there needs to be one. It no longer can be the 1 or 2 guys that have been tracking that data for the past 10 years and thinking that they're doing it the right way. Because that transparency and the amount of information that you have to provide to support that reduction is very different than it's been in the past. That ESG team should be skilled and experienced in the methodologies and the policies. They need to submit these disclosures in different ways. For instance, 2 Japanese OEMs just in the past few months are now requiring tier 1 suppliers to use a newer tool that's out there with the handle of Manufacturer 2030, also known as Beehive. And they're not the only ones around. They are definitely some competitors to that, but these disclosure portals are increasing in time. So with that, and with the requirement of the reduction and the associated documentation, this has forced boardrooms to take a much closer look at their recent activity, take a much deeper dive into what's been going on. And some of them have been a little surprised at the answers. There's been a lot of people saying, Well, yeah, I mean, we've been doing it this way for a long time, but if we're going to have to show more information, we better make sure that it's right. So many companies are coming to the reality that they need this third-party assistance, a professional, a skilled person with experience in this realm to come in and validate that both the baseline and the ongoing tracking methodology is in place to ensure accuracy. With that kind of stops our first phase of this, and I know you have some questions as a follow-up.
Very nice, thank you. Are all these really happening changes? Are you sure? It's a question.
I really am sure.
Sounds a lot. I feel like I'm Larry King live here, but just want to know, like you face so many large Fortune companies and serve them. Have you guys changed your mentality and thinking, and what really has changed so far? I know you're preparing to change, but
well, I guess
actual.
First I'll say I think a lot of people are still perplexed on why the change, because quite frankly, I mean, I think there were a lot of people out there that kind of felt like, especially during the pandemic, there had been a little increase certainly over the past couple of years about ESG and about increasing metrics. And there were a lot of people that were in agreement that this was just going to wane and maybe even go away for a while as the economy recovered. So, but quite frankly, it's really the opposite. And truly, there are lots of financial companies in accounting and finance and wealth management that are saying this is a tectonic shift. Pandemic, the lockdown, everyone working from home and still working from home for the foreseeable future, everyone had extra time on their hands. And with that time, they had time to research what was happening around them, right?
Right.
They basically are looking at this economic crisis and this global pandemic that triggered many a debate on what societies really value. And at the same time, it exposed the extent of our global connectivity, right? We're all kind of in this together. It's really not the United States or North America. Everybody's experiencing these things, especially the global pandemic. So whether it's the demands for racial diversity or gender equality and equity, and that's the S in ESG. We've also go over to the E in ESG. We have experienced just such a great deal of just terrible things that we've witnessed over the past 12 months. Gone from the virus that's moved, some people think, from an animal to a human. We've watched earthquakes and hurricanes and flooding and drought and insect outbreaks of all things, wildfires and extreme heat and cold.
Right.
And the growing opinion is that this is climate change, and people that were poo-pooing it for a long time are now at the point where there's consensus building. And when consensus builds and people have time on their hands, what's going to happen? There's going to be a demand for change. And that's why a lot of these investment groups feel like ESG is not going to go away. It is a component that is here to stay.
Right. And you mentioned in your slides, I think one of the tools that large Japanese top 2 OEMs starting to adapt and asking for their tier 1s as well, and which will trickle down to tier 2, tier 3 to also follow that. But how useful are those tools? It's not like when we go out and sell our products, services to our customers, let's say in IT, a lot of times we face a situation where they say, oh, we got Windows installed, so we're covered. We got the EHS team who are professionals covering, but it's not like you just put a checkbox in this Beehive tools and be done with it, right? How do you see the amount of work and using an outsourced partnering like Cornerstone?
Beehive, we've been on Beehive and worked with some clients, and it certainly seems like a good system. But here's the challenge with Beehive system or any system right now. The way the Beehive works is they charge a fee to the OEM, right, to participate, because it's saving the OEM time, right? They're shifting full-time employees who have been dealing with all of this over to this service, right? So it's still a value to them.
Right.
But what also happens is the requirement is to the tier ones right now only. And right now, the tier ones also have to pay a fee. The fee is a benefit to a degree because it's certainly a portal where they put their information instead of writing it on an email or filling out a form. They're just simply putting it into this. But there is a fee, and if you have multiple facilities, that fee can add up pretty quickly. We've got one client that we were talking to the other day, and it was going to be representing about $30,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
Now, the Hive part of fee, where people, it's a blog, basically. It's where people are sharing ideas on how they're reducing their water footprint or their waste footprint. So that's a benefit, right? Again, there's similar tools out there. But because of the costs, we're not sure, the jury's still out. Nobody knows how many people are going to subscribe to using that. Also, make their vendors pay to put the information in. So you still, while you have those particular portals, or let's say it affects two different OEMs, or it affects a few different tier one suppliers, those tier one suppliers might have 30 other customers that are asking some of the same information and some additional information too that don't have that portal, right? Part of this is this increase in these requests and the still juggling of how we're, putting that information out to people. So what we're bringing to the table and what we've been recommending, we've recommended this for a while, but haven't had a lot of traction on it, is that people really take a look at these questionnaires, first of all, get a handle on them, because we've got clients that have multiple facilities around North America, and questionnaires are coming into salespeople, all places, and sometimes a plant in Kentucky and a plant in Mexico may be answering their own questions for the same customer. That's dangerous, right? We don't even know if they're saying the same thing. So we are recommending really kind of pulling all that together and also trying to figure out where the redundant requests are. Where those exist, go to those people and say, hey, we're tracking our carbon footprint now for 30 people. Here's how we're doing it. We would like to provide it to you electronically. Whether there's a portal or not. That way we're doing the calculation, and obviously there's a lot of setup. We've got that capability of setup because we're already doing it for clients now. Instead of pushing and sending out 30 different things, or if you look at the whole unit of a tier one, or tier two that might have 15 plants around North America, count the number of times that they could be handling this sort of thing. We turn it into, pull it all together, know who wants what, and push a button and it goes back out to those people. But it does take a lot of time and effort to get to that point, but the savings and the accuracy, the consistency of the data will be much, much better. And you're gonna wanna have that when you have these customers that are saying you must reduce by X%.
Yeah, and how do you validate the data is a question too. But let's say we're importing products from Japan and reselling to the sales office. The definition of carbon footprint parameters needs to be watched as well, right? In the future, those transportation, how they're going to be counted and considered. Several
different kinds of calculators, they might call them, on figuring out your carbon footprint. So you want to make sure as a tier one, tier two, even 2-3 supplier, that you are being judged equitably with whoever else you're competing with, right? So you want to confirm with the customer, your customer, what are the parameters of that footprint, it's really important because there are definitely additional scopes, they're called, that you can add to the point where you're looking at a life cycle analysis or footprint of that product. But that's not right now what the life cycle is, not necessarily what the customers are asking for. Sometimes they're just asking for within the boundaries of their operation, what's the footprint. But it's a very important distinction.
Let's keep updating in the series. And so next time you'll be covering what?
We'll be covering a lot more detail about what we just spoke about is really kind of what comes next. So if you are sitting in that boardroom and you're going, yeah, you know what? We've been doing it the same way for 10 years and I'm not sure if we're doing it well or not.
Right.
How do we address that?
And then move on to the automotive sector specifically. Thank you so much for your time today and learned a lot. We'll try to seek your guidance and help support. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right.
Happy day.
Yes.
Bye.
See you. Thank you.